So I've been doing homeopathy since about 1991, and I come from a medical family. My father's a doctor and my mother is a nurse, so I guess it was kind of in the blood. I was also really interested in anything to do with the human body and the way it works, so biology at school. It was my favourite subject. And then I developed, when I was a teenager, started to develop a lot of interest in all things alternative and especially kind of esoteric stuff. And then I was away travelling for many years, and that interest became stronger and stronger. And when I came back to settle again in England, I decided to move to South Devon, to the town of Totnes, which is a big hub for all things alternative. And at that time, it was a point in my life where I really wanted to really study something and go into something. And because I was very interested in the field of alternative medicine, and I'd heard about homeopathy and also how it was the cutting edge of alternative medicine, I decided that I wanted to study homeopathy, even though I didn't really even know anything about it. So that's one way of saying how I got into homeopathy. But the other way of saying is that it found me. Because I can say that it was, in many ways, a very subconscious but right decision for me, because what happened was I signed up for the course with the School of Homeopathy, and at that time it was correspondence for the first year or two. And I had delivered a big box of books. This was before I even really knew anything about homeopathy. I signed up and paid for the whole course. So something must have felt right within myself. I opened my box of books and I picked out the first book, which was, well, actually it was the smallest book I think I could find, and I thought, well, I'll just start with that. And it was George Vitholcus' Medicine of the New Man. And so I started reading this book, and then immediately after that I read Kent's philosophy on homeopathy, and it was just like the penny dropped. Everything fell into place, and I was like, well, now I know why I'm studying homeopathy. So that was kind of how I got into homeopathy, and then it just went from there, really. I became very impassioned and spent almost every waking moment reading about homeopathy and studying homeopathy, thinking about homeopathy, boring everybody stupid as well. That's how I got into homeopathy. I practiced down in Devon and also up in the Stroud area a bit. It took a while to get my practice going, and probably until I had a pretty full practice, it was sort of 4 or 5 years, maybe even a bit longer. And I had to really plug away at the beginning. And in those days, there weren't relatively so many homeopaths. Even in Totnes, there were only about 4 or 5 of us. Now there's probably like 20 or 30. But the way I developed my practice was to talk about homeopathy a lot. So basically, I would talk about homeopathy to almost every single person I met if they showed even the slightest interest. And at that time, I also had a young child who was going to school, so I would talk to parents in the playground when I was going to pick up my son, this sort of thing. But the main thing that helped me to really grow my practice was doing talks. So I'd probably do a talk every month or two. And usually, I would say about 2 or 3 people who came to that talk would come as a patient afterwards, or they'd send somebody else, a friend or a relative. And the other thing I used to do every year was to run a short course on homeopathy, how to use homeopathy at home for treating various common illnesses and stuff. And those 2 things together really helped to build my practice up. The other thing I did was I ran a children's clinic for the first few years in practice. Probably for the first 5 years, I ran a Saturday mornings children's clinic. And a lot of people come into homeopathy through their children. And that's what I saw, is they bring the kids first, and then a few weeks or months down the line, the mother would surely come, and then maybe the husband would be dragged along eventually, and sometimes not. So that's kind of how my practice grew and evolved. For many years I had a very, very busy practice, and I actually made a living solely from homeopathy. In latter years that's dropped off for various reasons. And now my practice is a lot smaller and quieter, which is also lovely. So I think I've kind of done my kind of really busy stint, and now I'm going into more quiet time, which suits me really well. Well, I love teaching homeopathy. For one thing, it keeps me very engaged with homeopathy for myself. So because, I'm coming to teach a subject, so I then have to study that subject or refresh myself on that subject in depth. So it keeps me very engaged with all different subjects in homeopathy, the philosophy or the case taking or the materia medica, whatever. And also I just enjoy the interaction with the students, and I actually learn a lot myself through teaching the students, because we have a room full of very capable people from many different fields of experience who are bringing their own wealth of information. So it's like a sharing ground. So we all learn a lot during the teaching. It's not just me standing up talking. In fact, I really like an interactive kind of classroom and more of a discussion, because I feel that so much more gets learnt and remembered that way when the atmosphere is really engaging and interesting. People remember. But mostly, I just really enjoy teaching. I don't even know why I do, to be honest. I just do. It's absolutely such a wonderful subject to study, because it's so broad and so deep that you will never get bored or reach the end, because there isn't one. You can just go on and on and on. And because homeopathy is really, the study of homeopathy is really about the study of life and the study of human beings. And so it branches out into every other subject conceivable. So it's such a broad subject, and you can never become tired from it, because there's always more to learn and always more to understand. So I've been with the School of Homeopathy from when I trained, which was, I started the course in 1991, when my son was born, and he's now just coming up to 23. So I've been involved with the school for 23 years. And for me, it feels like a part of my family. And I feel very attached to the school and absolutely love coming here. And I also love the way it's developed from its very, very homely atmosphere when it used to be at Yondacott, which was really cosy and really like a family. And then coming up to Hawkwood, at first, I was like, oh, what's this, But that's really, it took me a little bit to get used to it, but now I really love Hawkwood. Coming here, because everyone can be here together at the same time, on the same weekend, so we can all learn off each other. And the lovely atmosphere here, and all the trees and the views, and it's just very, very friendly place to be. And you'll be very well looked after if you come to the School of Homeopathy. Be very, very well looked after.